Is this the last best hope for a Babylon 5 reboot? Stay tuned.
Welcome to Babelcom 5.
So, this is a little bit off the cuff, but there have been some very interesting announcements in the Babylon 5 space over the last few days, which I thought I would try and be current on for once and catch you up on. And it all boils down to the fact that Warner Brothers have not always done live action stuff. In fact, they've quite often done stuff like this. Now, I don't know if you've ever seen the animated series of Batman from the early 90s, but this sort of stuff, as you can see, I've had on DVD for a number of years. And they haven't stopped there. In fact, they haven't stopped full stop, because this is a more recent adaptation of a Superman Batman comic book story, which again is Warner Brothers animation. And what this has to do with Babylon 5 is that JMS has been hinting for some time. J. Michael Straczynski, the creator of the series, he's been hinting for a while that there's been a project that has been completed as a standalone that is sort of going to go out this year when the Comic Cons start kicking off in a big way in the States. And he has now revealed the nature of that project. And the nature of the project is an animated story, which I assume is going to be a sort of feature-length animation featuring the voice talents of as many of the original cast as he could get. So we go from Batman to Captain John Sheridan, because Bruce Boxleitner is alive and kicking and riding Tron cycle rides in Disney World, I believe. But he and others should be featuring on the voice cast of this animated, I'm saying feature because I think it's going to be long for it to be worth our while doing it in the first place. And he seems excited about it from what I've heard from JMS's posts. I haven't been following them religiously because I'm not on his Patreon, so I don't know any more than the average Joe on the street knows about the project. But I know it's not the only one. There's definitely a reboot in the mix, which has been rumoured for some time, been delayed for some time, but there is the possibility that that could happen as well. I'm still not clear that it's been green-lit as such, and it's not... I think he said that it won't be a redo of the existing story that we know. It'll be some sort of reimagining, given current technologies, which would allow him to do something else. So there's that. He's also mentioned recently on a tweet some sort of audio drama type idea as well, which is the first I've heard of that, and some comics, I believe. Now, Babylon 5 has visited comics before, so that wouldn't actually be a brand new concept. In fact, if you look on the channel, you will find my review of the existing comics of the Babylon 5 universe, which were typically canon. So they extended the accepted lore of the series in comic book form at the time the series was running. So I just recently did my sort of summary of The Legend of the Rangers, and that wasn't the last thing that we had in the Babylon 5 pantheon in terms of film. That was actually the Lost Tales, which came years later. But we haven't had newly produced Babylon 5 official material for, I don't know, probably about sort of 15 years now, I think. I haven't checked the exact date, so that could be wrong, and of course, depending on when you watch this, it'll be very wrong. But someone asked me, am I excited about this as a concept? And it's a really hard one to answer that, because I've just come out of watching Star Trek Picard Season 3, and, it was clearly designed to give you the warm fuzzies, because, without spoiling anything about that, it takes us back to very familiar ground, and let me put it to you that way. And Babylon 5 has always been a bit harder than Star Trek in some respects, and it doesn't have the benefit of having the cast still around, sadly. We've lost a lot of people from the original Babylon 5 cast, which is terribly sad. So it limits really what they can now do. I'm sure they could do, de-aging and all that sort of good stuff and maybe do something like that. But to me, that's always a little bit forced. So in a sense, a reimagining with a new cast does actually make a lot of sense at this point because sadly, we can't really do a lot else, I don't think. We won't see a lot else. But Warner Brothers are really good with their animations. I mean, they are really good. I mean, when I saw the original Batman animated series, I know that's years ago now, so it's not going to be the same people anymore and so on. I get that. But there's a lot of experience in the Warner Brothers animation team, and they still clearly care and are very respectful of the comics material. So, and I'm just chuckling because it occurred to me that not only do we have Daffy Duck featuring as Doc Dodgers in Babylon 5, so there's already a Warner Brothers animated linkage, and it'd be hilarious if there was a little sort of extras with that tie-in. What amused me thinking about it is that a lot of Babylon 5 is already animated. When you stop and think about it, it was the first series to use extensive CGI models, which means that a lot of the series was already animated. You might call it Babylon 5 an animated series right from the get-go, with some live actors thrown in. Now, I know that's nonsense, obviously. But nevertheless, the station upon which all the action takes place is only a CGI model when you see it from the outside. And indeed, inside, a lot of the shots were CGI rendered, CGI generated. So a lot of Babylon 5 has always been virtual. So actually, in terms of, oh my god, it's a live action, it's got into animated, it doesn't matter. It already was, actually. A lot of it already was. So, people like Bruce Boxleitner have done voiceover work before, I'm sure, and, it shouldn't really be a stretch for any actor to do voiceover work because it is just, an element of what they do day to day anyway. So, am I excited about it? Yes. JMS obviously has been at the helm of it, so it's going to be canon in whichever universe it occurs in, and I believe it is going to be representing a chunk of the original timeline. So, wherever that falls, we could see something pre-Sheridan on Babylon 5, it could be young Sheridan, or it could be something that's more like Lost Tales, where we see events later that we have heard hinted about in the series, but not actually seen the conclusion of in the series itself. And there were many of those. We don't know how Crusade ended. We don't know how the Legend of the Rangers would have ended. We don't know how the Telepath War might have gone on exactly. Lots of stuff that we just don't know about. So there's a lot of material out there that it could cover. So, yes, could be really, really interesting. And Bruce Boxleitner was clearly really excited when he saw the finished product, which I think is encouraging. Now, yes, there's some bias there. Of course there is. But, there is a lot of love out there for this series. And maybe it's not as big as Star Trek. Maybe it's not as well known as Star Trek. But Faith manages. And is managed again. So, excited to see what people make of this. I have no inside track on this whatsoever. So I'm just like you. I'm just watching it from the outside, looking in, hearing the tweets. I'm not on the Patreon, so I don't know exactly what is being said about it. But I'm quite sure that we will see maybe even more resurgence. I mean, I'm seeing so many Babylon 5 podcasts now. I mean, back when I was doing my sort of episode by episode synopses and reactions, that was quite new to me as a concept. I've never done that before. And now I'm seeing all these teams and pairings of people doing podcasts and talking to the actors. I mean, Peter Jurassic's popping up left, right and centre. It's hilarious and brilliant and lovely. But it's just sort of, we are clearly in a time where people like me are, having a bit of a nostalgic phase, as we often do at our sorts of ages. And we are looking back and these shows are being brought back into our lives again, which is great. So we will see what we will see. But it seems that the last of the Babylon stations is not quite done with us. And we will be revisiting this old friend and hearing the voices that have been left behind in its walls again. So, at least some of them. So yes, I will stop waxing lyrical at that point, but I'd like to hear in the comments about obviously what you've heard about this sort of new feature. We should know more in just a couple of days, actually, from the time when I'm filming this. So I think in sort of 10th of May, maybe we'll hear a bit more from JMS on exactly what the sort of setting is and so on. So that'll be an interesting day, and I imagine we'll see Babylon 5 trending on Twitter once again, as it has been. And I do wonder whether or not that is in part what Warner Brothers are looking for, because Warner Brothers went through this strange quiet phase about Babylon 5 where they didn't really seem to acknowledge that they even had anything to do with it, and then all of a sudden, as I was starting to do my synopses, in fact, it popped back onto their website. So this, I think, has to be a positive sign, and I'm sure they will be looking at the reaction to this animated feature in a very interested fashion, because it's potentially a big science fiction franchise that they haven't done anything with, which seems bonkers in this day and age, because, I keep hearing rumours about Stargate restarting, we've had Star Trek explode, and in fact Star Trek's an interesting example, because we've had Lower Decks and we've had Prodigy, both of which are animated and doing quite well, and people really like it because, of course, the original actors and actresses can get involved with them very easily as voice actors. They don't have to travel miles and go into studios, and they don't have to recreate physical sets. They can just go and record it and do it, and it's and if the animation is done kindly, great, we're there. So yeah, there's a I mean, I'd settle for an animated series. If they wanted to just do an animated series, I'd be pretty happy with that. But let me know what you would like to see. Be very interested to hear. Let me know in the comments. And we'll see where we land. All the best. Cheers for now.